I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and this is All Things Sensory by Harkla.
We are both certified occupational therapy assistants, and together with Harkla, we are on a mission to empower parents, therapists, and educators to help raise confident and strong children of all abilities.
On this podcast, we chat about all things sensory, diving into special needs, occupational therapy, parenting, self-care, overall health and wellness, and so much more.
We are here to provide raw, honest, and fun strategies, ideas, and information for parents, therapists, and educators, as well as other professionals to implement into daily life.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of All Things Sensory by Harkla. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and today we have a really great conversation with Mickey, who is a homeschooling mother.
Of four boys.
She's
amazing.
With her oldest, who does have a diagnosis.
Multiple diagnoses.
And
yes.
ADHD.
I liked what she said. They keep adding letters to his name. I was like, you're sweet. She's awesome. This conversation is fantastic. I learned so much. I think a lot of homeschool misconceptions were put to rest during this episode.
She definitely makes homeschooling sound not just like fun and enjoyable, but also doable.
That's literally what I was thinking. Yep. Yeah.
Well, let's just jump in and do it.
Okay, let's meet Mickey. Hello, Mickey. How are you today?
Hi, I am doing well. My morning was a little frazzled. It was not what I expected, but it happened and we're all good and we're here now. So it's lovely.
Honestly, that's how it's been for us today as well. So we're doing our best.
Yeah. Now, before we jump into learning who you are and what you do and all those great things, we're going to ask you our 5 secret questions.
Okay.
And they change every time, as you know. You've listened to our podcast.
I do. I was like, I can't prepare for this, but I know kind of the gist.
Okay. First question. What is the last movie you watched?
Oh, well, I started to watch Alvin and the Chipmunks because that's what my kids are watching right now. But I guess, well, this isn't fully a movie, but my 8-year-old and I are watching The Mandalorian a couple nights a week together. So we've been watching that. And that's really fun to do with him.
Okay, I have no idea what that is.
It's on Disney Plus, right?
Okay.
It's a Star Wars.
It's Star Wars. Yes, with Baby Yoda.
No idea.
Probably at least seen. Have you not seen Baby Yoda?
No, I'm disconnected.
So
okay.
My son and I have.
It's my son's most favorite character on earth.
So
he loves Baby Yoda.
My son and I have watched like 3 episodes, but I think I fell asleep during parts of them because I've never been a big Star Wars fan, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not as into it as he is, but yes, it's a fun thing to get to do, like not a little kid show with him. It's a fun.
It's not.
He
It's
gets
not
to
a
stay
cartoon.
up later than his brothers and do that. So.
Oh, it's special. That's sweet.
It's good. All right, the next question is, what smell brings back the most nostalgic memories for you?
Oh, good question. What smell? Well, this isn't like necessarily a positive one.
That's okay.
The smell of like dust and cigarettes.
Oh, okay. What's the feeling?
I smoke, but because my grandmother, who basically raised me, did, and her house was just like, we lived in Central California, and it was just dirty, just because it's dirty. But that smell, like I'll walk into someone's basement, and it just is like, oh, grandma's house. Here we are.
Yep,
that's sweet. So it's a good memory.
It's a positive memory. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
But I'm not like seeking out candles that are scented. Let
me find a candle.
It brings back like positive things.
Let me find a candle that smells like cigarettes and dirt.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a thing. Maybe other people have that same sentiment. You never know.
I mean, I've seen like tobacco scented things with like floral and tobacco kind of, but it's not the same, so
No.
I don't really want it to be a thing.
No, thank you.
Okay, next question. What superpower do you wish you had?
Oh, this is a good one. I think flying. I just think it would be really fun. Not for any wonderful audacious goal, but just to be able to fly and go watch the sunset and get places quickly. It sounds wonderful.
I agree.
Would you just fly with your body, or would you have a little personal airplane that you could just get in and fly?
Ooh. I was thinking my body. That sounds nice too. Just to but somehow I would have a superpower that protected me from all the elements also.
Okay.
So
and the birds.
And the birds and the bugs.
And the bugs.
The bugs.
That's what I initially thought of.
It would get me.
No, thank you. Okay. Would you rather live forever or travel back in time to live in the 1700s?
Oh my gosh. I don't think I'd want either. I guess the 1700s, but I mean, it would be kind of cool to live forever, but every movie where you see that happens, it's such a sad thing.
It's true.
It just isn't it. Yeah. So I think traveling back in time would be really interesting. Yeah.
But what happens if you travel back to the 1700s and then you die the next day because you get food poisoning or something? I don't know.
Yes.
Diphtheria. I don't know what did I get back then. I don't know.
I don't know. I guess I would have rather lived and died and gotten to do something cool like time travel.
Oh, okay.
Versus having to live through everything.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know if
that would be interesting, but that never ends.
This is a really deep question.
I know.
This is very deep.
That's why we call them your deepest, darkest secrets.
All right, last one.
Last one, our favorite question. Mickey, what is your sensory quirk?
Oh, my sensory quirk, I get very overwhelmed by too much sound.
You and me both, sister.
Yes. So the last couple of years, I'm really thankful for certain parts of because I hate grocery shopping or going to busy places. And now we don't have to do that. And it became normal to order your groceries. So I am super thankful that I don't have to go into those places, but I am stuck with a bunch of loud boys.
I know. I was like, you probably have a loud household, I would assume.
Yeah.
So then my follow-up question is, when you do have to go to this grocery store, or when you did, what strategies did you use?
Deep breathing. I would just alter the time I went, honestly, would be most of it. Would I go super late at night? I would go during I would even prefer to go with all of my children than to go at peak busy time when there's lots of people and sound around. So that's mostly what I did. And then afterwards followed up with now we're just gonna go for a walk. It's gonna be quiet, a planned
an outing afterwards. That's calming.
To decompress.
I like it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, now that everyone knows all of your deepest, darkest secrets, tell us what you do, why you do it, how you do it, all the things. Tell us about you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can answer all of that, but I'm a homeschooling mom of 4 boys, and I love it. And I never thought I'd be here, but I am. And I get to coach moms, specifically homeschool moms who are struggling. And it is one of my favorite parts of the week because there's just so much shame tied around struggling with this educational choice we've made. And to be able to say, hey, I see you and I understand, and to help them find ways to get unstuck is really fun and powerful. And it's just a really creative outlet for me.
How did you, or why did you decide to homeschool your boys?
Yes, I am I would call myself a reluctant homeschooler because I did not want to. It was not, I was a music teacher before I was a homeschooler, and I just always thought my kids would go to school, and it wasn't, I mean, your kids change everything, right? But it wasn't until I had my own, and my oldest is on the spectrum, has ADHD, has lots of, they keep adding letters, but lots of things. And it wasn't till he started doing preschool pretty early, and then we did pre-K, and he was an IEP, and I loved his school, loved his teachers, loved his providers, loved everything about it, and he hated everything about it, and it was horrible, like, for him. It was just like his own experience, and we became homeschoolers because I saw he was not coping well with it. It was not going well, and it was just really heartbreaking. And when I realized, what if we just gave you some more space? What could that do? And when we did, so much changed for him. Like, so much. So many of the struggling symptoms he was having honestly just kind of floated away, and we were able to kind of prioritize what we were working on and how we were supporting him. And so it, like, really, there's a lot of reasons why we became homeschoolers, but when he told me, I just want to make robots and design costumes for kindergarten, I was like, oh, buddy, like, let's do that.
Yes.
You know, like, that hits everything. And we can spend 5 hours running around outside and getting all of your sensory needs met. And we can take you to OT more than what we would have if you were in kindergarten. Like, so much was, we were able to better support him specifically.
I am a little curious if you want to go into a little more detail on his experience in pre-K. And it was pre-K. Did he go to kindergarten in the traditional
Didn't
setting?
go to kindergarten.
Just preschool and pre-K.
No, just preschool and pre-K. And I still don't know if we should have changed it, but we pushed through the whole pre-K year and decided to finish it out. But he was just going 3 afternoons a week, and mostly the adaptations they were making were kind of social emotional supports. Like, he's on the spectrum, but he has no trouble with academic learning at all. That is not the struggle for him. There was some fine motor stuff they were doing, but his huge struggles are a lot of anxiety and a lot of separation anxiety from me. And he does okay when I'm gone, but it's the coming and going, and it was manifesting in so much anxiety the rest of the day that it got to the point, and I've asked him for permission to share this because he also is
sweet.
Pretty passionate about helping other kiddos that are struggling too. It's really sweet. But it got to the point where he was making himself throw up in the mornings because he didn't want to go. He would run away in the parking lot and climb up trees, and he was doing everything he possibly could to communicate his needs, which were, I just can't be here. And at the time, we didn't have an autism diagnosis. And looking back, I realize now that the word I wasn't familiar with was masking. And he was masking so much that he could, because he is quite social. It's just everything is so much more work for him. And so he was working so hard that he had nothing left the rest of the day at all. And we just wanted something different. And I'm thankful we were able to do that, and that we still are.
Yeah. So how many boys do you have?
I have 4 boys.
And have you decided to homeschool all of them?
Yes. Oh, it's a good question. We say we take it year by year and kid by kid. So we're not like set on we have to do it this way or that everyone has to do it this way. And in fact, something that was critical for me to feel okay with homeschooling was just becoming aware of all the different resources there are. And previously we were near Seattle, and now we're in a different state. But there's just so many kind of hybrid options, and a term that people can look up is like umbrella schools. But even in both cities we've lived in, we've had a public school we're working with, and our kids are able to take part-time classes there. So today, my older two are at in Oregon, it's called a charter school, but they're at their school that they go one day a week and they do project-based learning, and then the rest of the week they're homeschooling. So finding those sorts of resources made me feel much less burdened, and like it's not all on my shoulders to oversee everything. But there's a lot of different options in a lot of places, which is freeing.
Well, I like that idea that they're able to kind of get outside of the house and experience that social interaction piece. Because that, especially you said your older boy, he is social and he does want to have friends. So to have the ability for him to be able to do that is huge.
It is. Yeah. And yeah, it's funny because he like doesn't want to go away from me to socialize. But we've had a lot of talks about how like, even though he's not, because he's like, I'm not learning anything at school, but that's just because he's like reading it, like he reads perfectly. There's just so much he doesn't need to grasp academically, but that group learning, that social dynamic, and there's so much like social troubleshooting you have to do when you're on your own that is important. And it is a little stressful for him, but he recently realized kids bring their Pokemon cards to school, and he can play Pokemon at lunch.
There you
and
go.
He's like, okay, because he loves social things, but he loves it to have like a clear game with rules that goes around it, and that makes it make sense for him. So he's like, okay, I can bring the cards, and we know what to do, kind of a thing. So that's been really that's been a huge breakthrough for him, actually.
Good.
Giving him some of that control with that anxiety, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. Yeah. And that's been a big learning for me, of just learning like it's actually okay for him to experience some of that, and like in small amounts, right? But it's important for him to learn how to have that and then work through it in tiered ways. But that's been hard for me.
Well, yeah. And that brings up a good point. Oh, Rachel, you had a thought.
Yeah, no, go for it.
But we don't want to shield our kids from experiencing these hard moments and from experiencing anxiety. Instead, we want to, let them have some of it in little bits and pieces and teach them those strategies so that they know what to do in those moments.
Yes.
That's a great reminder.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next thought was finding a homeschool program. I'm sure we have a lot of parents who are listening and they're like, yeah, homeschool would be cool, but how the heck do I find a program? How do I know that I'm teaching them the right information?
Yes. When I saw you wrote that question, it's a big question.
Yeah, I know.
And so much of it is dependent on where you live. And that's what makes it tricky. So one question when I'm working with homeschool moms, we talk a lot about just defining our values and what we actually want for our kids, because a lot of homeschool is completely different than a school setting. Like it's just so different. But there are practical laws that each state and country even has. And so there's a site, I think it's HSLD, but it's just homeschool state laws, and it'll walk you through what your area's requirements are. And that's just a really good starting point. So some states, all you have to do is put an X on whether you did school that day or not, and you basically submit like a calendar. They don't even define what your school looks like. It's just, did you do anything? And then other states are much more, you work with an advisor, they're kind of checking in regularly. And typically, if you're working with a charter school or an umbrella school or something like that, they require some records of what you're doing in your homeschool. So those are just the very practical, like you have to figure out what your kind of guidelines and boundaries are to do it legally. I don't think that there are any states that let you just do it forever without checking in. But many, you don't have to say anything until they're 8. So it just depends. It's just there isn't as much checking in. But so from that, it is a whole other world, and it's actually really exciting once you get into it, because it's not just here's a curriculum, do it. Like, the state will not hand you that. You get to, like, I actually love this part of it, and this is the geeky part of me, but it's like you get to find your homeschool philosophy. Like, a lot of people have heard of Montessori, but so that's one. There's Charlotte Mason, there's Waldorf, there's unschooling, there's all sorts of different kind of categories and overarching value systems for how and what you're learning and what it looks like. And then once you decide that, then you get to kind of dive into the specific stuff of what you're doing each step of the way. But it's really fun, and you end up picking it by a lot of trial and error. Every homeschool mom I know has bought probably more than they could afford or needed to buy, because it's just, you don't know if you want just a book that you just open it one day and then they write in the answers and you do it together, or if you want something that is just like a mental math curriculum, where all of them, you're still reaching the academic goals, but you don't know exactly how to get there. Or a lot of times we pick what we would want, but it's not what our kid wants. So it's a lot of troubleshooting, and most of us kind of fall into this very eclectic mix of this is what's working for our family and this is what works for this season. But I think it's really, really fun, because I have a big family, and it's really common when you're a homeschooler to have big families, it seems. But you can find family-based curriculums also that are it's a beautiful opportunity to get to have mixed age learning, where you're not dividing your brain up and your time up constantly between you get 30 minutes, you get 30 minutes, you get 30 minutes. Like, it's just too much for everyone usually to do that all day. And so having us all sit down at the table, and we're reading Little House on the Prairie right now, and we're able to pull out social studies and history, and we can even add in some science projects and baking and do a lot of that together. And then I can work on specific phonics and math stuff with the older kids that are at just wildly different levels. So that, I think, finding family-based learning is what a lot of homeschool moms end up finding as a really practical and fun way of doing it.
Honestly, that sounds like fun to me. Right?
I
mean, it's like OT, but you're working on life skills, and you're working on the academic side of it as well, and kind of building in what the kiddos need in order to be successful,
and what they want, and what
they want, and then you can incorporate. They're not sitting at the table all day. You can go outside, and you can go to the kitchen. You can hang upside down, and there's just so much more flexibility for adaptations and modifications.
Yes. Yeah, and that's honestly one of my biggest tips, is just there aren't as many rules as we think there are. I just feel like that's a statement for life, but we limit ourselves by a lot of comparison and things we think we ought to be doing. But our kids are requiring a level of creativity from us, and we get the chance to incorporate that. We don't need to. Homeschool is beautiful because you don't have to do it for 6 hours a day. You do it for very little, and it's really fun. And then you get to live life and go for hikes and do all the other stuff that's really important also for becoming an adult.
Well, yeah, all of those are so important for child development overall. And, I don't want to diss on schools too much, but they're probably getting more of that sensory from homeschooling with you than they would in a traditional classroom.
Well, it's
which of course we love.
Yeah, but it's also that's what kids are supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be outside and exploring. I mean, if we look back, to the 1700s,
Gosh, it's not.
that's what kids are doing. They're out working and playing outside and getting that natural sensory input. I mean, this is a sensory podcast, so of course we're going to go that direction, but it's cool to hear you say, we finish our school and then we go for a hike and we go explore. It's like, well, maybe I need to homeschool.
I bet we could create like a sensory-based homeschool curriculum where we would include like spelling and math and obstacle courses.
Yes.
I know of some great people who create some things like that. So,
well, you are going to have to send us their info.
Yes. Okay, I will.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about, we chatted a little bit about social skills, but let's go back and talk a little bit about just fostering social interactions and having those opportunities available, because I think that's one of those misconceptions. I know my husband, when I've talked about homeschooling, he's like, well, how do they play sports and how do they meet friends and socialize and whatnot? So answer that for him.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's funny. It's one of those questions that homeschool moms squirm at a little bit, but I think they're just like a little defensive sometimes about it. And I'm like, no, this is actually really important that we talk about it because it is valid and everyone's wondering it. So we might as well and some people struggle with it. But I actually think homeschool is so I love schools. I'm still not against schools. I think teachers are amazing. I think we actually get to socialize more in homeschool in a way. It's just different, but because we can decide what that looks like. So for us, we're able to be done with any sit down specific learning in our home after an hour. That's not abnormal at all. And then we can go do other stuff with people. My first kind of step into homeschool was a group. It's called Wild and Free, which is an incredible group, and everyone they've got Instagram, podcast, conferences, and local groups. But it's just a nature group, and you meet up with other homeschool families and go for hikes. And some of them you kind of draw out more learning if you've got older kids, and you might be journaling what you see in nature and diagramming it and whatever. But really, it's just hanging out in nature groups, and it's mixed ages. And it was the first time I saw my son, who was struggling at the time, mightily, playing with a 14-year-old boy, and they created this entire game, and then they brought in everyone else. Wow. Toddlers are falling, and bigger kids are helping them up. They're bringing them back to adults. It was just this beautiful, beautiful picture that, of course, you can get that at recess and other things, but we were just able to take all day to do that. Wow. And then you grow that. And, there's, for sports, you can still get into even the school district sports. We are doing parkour right now,
awesome.
Which is so fun. But where we live, they have parkour for homeschoolers classes. So we go during the day. It's really fun. But you can do everything. And I kind of view summers as my time to really load up on camp. Because I'm with you all year long. Let's go do all the fun sports things. But we do a lot of sports, actually. And if I know for my kiddos, if they were in school all day, my oldest wouldn't have the mental energy to go then put that into being in an organized group sport, just from experience, at least at his age. And so it's been a really fun way to do that. But I do know it takes work. And I think definitely the last few years, if you started homeschooling then and you're listening to this, I felt so sad for everyone who started, because honestly, you lost all the best parts of it. You lost it all. And so the socializing is, I think, the best part of it. So for anyone that's afraid of that, as long as you're not coming into homeschooling wanting to shelter your kids and keep them away, you can find it. And if you can't find it in your area because you're in a small rural area, you can create it, because you are not the only one wanting and needing this. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a whole co-op you start. Just have people over for pancakes or go
Oh,
walk.
Yep.
Right?
I
So
love
true.
it.
We all want that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so interesting. So I read a book called Free to Learn, and that was one of the things, that book.
That's a good one.
Yep.
You went real deep.
I did. Oh, I loved it. And one of the things they talked about was that the socialization that children get with peers of different age groups is actually so much better than socializing with just their age group. So, my son is in second grade in just a public school. And he tells me that, he gets interaction with like some of the third graders at recess time, but most of his social interaction is with other second graders. And so I do think about that sometimes. I'm like, oh, he needs to hang out with the younger kids and the older kids more.
Totally. And I do think for anyone that has their kids in public school, there's still opportunities for that outside of school. It really isn't either or. Like, it's not like one is way better and the other is way worse. It's just you see the possibilities for what could be a shortcoming, and then you work with what you need to do in that, right? Like, homeschoolers could be in their home all day alone, but you don't have to be, and that's the fun part. And public schoolers could only be with one age, but that's not your entire day. Like, there's so much more to life. So it's beautiful that we can make things work for our kids and our families, I think.
Yep, totally.
love
It's such a
that.
great outlook. See, this is why we wanted you on the podcast,
Yes.
was because you have so many great ideas and just ways to look at this.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I just feel like homeschool can get such a bad rap from so many people who just haven't learned about it and they don't know about all the benefits. I'm still stuck on the nature school, the hiking, like that just sounds like so much fun. That just sounds like what every child needs.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love it.
Yep.
Yes.
So let me see. What else did we want to chat about? We kind of talked about staying organized with the different ages and kind of working in a curriculum, which you explained that you like to follow that family learning style.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just how do you organize your space, your material? How do you set it all up? Like, what? Give us like a visual.
Like a quick rundown of like what a day would look like.
Oh yeah, do that. Yeah, do that.
Okay. I'm like, you don't want to see my space because I'm not an organized person. I think organization is not my strong suit.
Okay.
And I have more like ADHD symptoms than I ever realized.
Well, that's good to know that people who don't have Pinterest perfect homes can still homeschool
Successfully, yep.
We really can. Yeah, we can. Okay, so a rundown. Here's how I like to organize my homeschool day is to have just kind of a skeleton outline, like a rhythm of your day, like you would with like a baby or a toddler, right? But that's what we have for our day. It's not like necessarily hour by hour, but we wake up, we have breakfast, we do like a morning walk, or sometimes we go to a park if they would rather. Then we come home, we have snack, and while we're sitting and eating, we're also doing a read aloud time, which often correlates to they're called unit studies, is kind of the term for the family style learning. So that's our time when we're sitting and eating, which is a pro tip. If you give them food, they don't talk as much and they're more likely to stay in the space you're in.
I love it.
So do that. Crunchy things like apples work really well. And then right after that, we usually I do kind of center style learning for our, like when one kid's needing to do like reading practice with me, another one's doing his math work, and then my preschooler, he's brilliant. And I usually give him an activity in the corner that's a little bit more self-led. So we kind of rotate through this. And then after that, we go back outside, we go for a walk, and then it's lunchtime. And after lunch, we always do kind of a quiet rest hour. And then after that, we have either we go to parkour or we have a play date scheduled, or actually right now we're going to the chiropractor a lot, which is a total side thing because we were in a car accident last year and everything's, yeah, it was awful. But so we're going to the chiropractor and it's actually been incredible. I know you've talked about chiropractors on here before, but I've just been like, wow, things with my 4-year-old, like that I didn't go to the chiropractor for are just dramatically changing, and it's shocking. Like his speech, his pronunciation, he has night terrors. Like that's a total side note. But anyways, so the afternoons are kind of the wild card. Like we'll have different activities at that point. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know. Okay. It's very, and then we've had music time, so we do that. Okay, I'm a music teacher, so
yes,
we got
makes
music.
Sense. Yeah. Okay, so you have your youngest, I think, is close to Tripp's age, right?
Yeah,
like 17, 18. Yes. How do you incorporate your youngest in here as well? Because I'm thinking, like, man, if I had 3 older kids and like Tripp running around, like, how do you do? What does that look like?
Oh my gosh, I would love to know too. This is having a toddler and homeschooling is, for me, is always harder than a newborn in homeschooling. Even though I'm less exhausted, he is like, he has stuff he always is wanting to do, and now he's throwing tantrums and just got a lot going on. But my favorite things with him are like sensory things, right? So like he loves water tables. So I will just sit him down next to me with those IKEA buckets with like an inch of water and some scoops and spoons. And like for 2 months, he gets that every day and he's super happy to do that. But he also just is very happy to entertain himself if we're reading, and we aren't ever doing so much for so long that it's too hard for him. And if it is, then we do have to stop. So there is this push and pull of like, well, we can't do. So for example, my son, we're making these. Do you know what Legends of Zelda is?
Yes.
It's a video game.
Heard of it, yes. I've actually heard of that one.
No, okay. We're making costumes, Legends of Zelda costumes, and directed by my 8-year-old because this is a love of his. But it's a lot of hands-on stuff that I have to be helping with, and like my toddler just can't have direct access to needles and hot iron. Like
that is frowned upon, you know.
It's frowned upon.
Yeah. So there's just this push and pull where we're all having to compensate for, like, we can do the costume making, but for 7 minutes, and that's all I can handle, like redirecting the toddler and doing this and pushing him out. Like, so we've got like toys on the windowsills, kind of Montessori style, that he can reach and stuff. And we just got a puppy, so he plays with her a lot. But
oh my gosh, sorry, I'm like, you just got a puppy with everything else you're doing. You are so brave.
I know it. I think it's because I don't have a newborn.
You just needed something to add on.
I don't know why. Yeah, and it just like, I just had to have her. She's so sweet.
What kind of dog is she?
She is half Aussie and half Bernese Mountain Dog, and poodle. So she's a fluffy, sweet girl.
Good. Anyways, I interrupted you. I apologize. I just had to. Wow.
No, I mean that everyone I know that has a toddler and homeschools, it's a lot like having a toddler and having other children. Yeah, it's just like it's a lot of work. Absolutely. So, and it's a lot of fun, and I love having older kids with a toddler. Like, I've never had this much of an age gap between all my kids. I like had 3 and 3 years and then a space in this guy. And to have an 8-year-old who, I mean, he's not like doing a lot for me, but he'll redirect him for me, or like he'll pick him up if he falls, or, you know, like it's just so sweet that even in our home, we're getting that mixed age socialization where he wouldn't have known how to help a baby before. And he really gets a lot of that time. And because my oldest is 8 years older than our youngest, or 7 years older, he wouldn't have had as much time with him normally. True. So it's really, really healthy for him, I think, to get that and to understand, like, it's okay if a toddler's fussing and yelling. It doesn't mean anything's bad, or it's just a sign, and we can work with that.
Yeah.
He's learning so many life skills.
Seriously.
Yeah. And he's doing so good. I mean, honestly, I wished I had known a family, and I know every family's different in every circumstance and season, it changes, but I wished I had someone that could look at me when my oldest was 4 and say, it's not always going to be just like this. Like, it might not be like this picture that you have in your mind of what it'll look like one day, but it'll be different in some way, and you will be more equipped, you will be more patient, and your kid's going to learn. Like, they're going to learn some things, and I just didn't know. I think I was super hopeless when I found you guys, actually, and everything that you guys share really was the first time that I had learned what sensory needs were. I had no idea how to advocate for my kid. Like, our doctors didn't know. They had no idea what to do. No one understood. And it was like finding you guys really helped us, and like getting a weighted blanket and getting a weighted vest was like our first thing. And every tool along the way has like dramatically helped us. And it's lots and lots of steps, but our life is like worlds different from how it was 4 years ago. And I'm just so happy, so thankful and happy for how everyone along the way was like a really important tool, and we've been able to utilize a lot of things, and a lot of it's really thankful to you guys. So you're doing good work.
Thank you. Love hearing that. I love hearing that for the people who are where you were 4 years ago, who are finding us now, who are learning about their kiddos now, and they're like, what do I do? Where do I start? I feel like this episode is going to give them hope to know that it's okay if they're not going the traditional schooling route. It's okay to feel overwhelmed and to ask for help and to do something different.
But to also know that this will pass, and it's a season, and it won't always be this hard.
Yes. Yeah. And I really was so fearful each step of the way, and even seeking an evaluation was terrifying for me. And yet it was like the best gift. It's not always like that, I don't think, but our evaluator and psychologist that we work with was so compassionate and kind and understanding. And it was like, I mean, he gave us a lot of pep talks that we really needed. Like, we just needed someone that could understand and look into our lives and like speak with like just compassion and affection and understanding of what we were dealing with, and also not look at our kid like he's a problem. Like, everything was just so affirmative. And so if anyone hasn't gotten that and is thinking about it, it's not always a really negative experience.
Okay.
Such a good thing to point out.
Yes.
Okay, I would love it if you could talk a little bit about what you do on the more like business side where you help others to get started on homeschooling.
Yeah, it started kind of very organically, and I run an Instagram account and started coaching women, because so many moms are reaching out to me and saying like, this is going wrong, or I'm thinking about homeschooling and I have no idea where to start. And so after doing this with a lot of people, I realized I should actually offer this as a service. And so I offer coaching to moms who are starting homeschooling or who have really reached kind of their limit of like, they are feeling really anxious, their kids are resisting, and they can't even conceptualize what to do now. And so I help moms get started. And a lot of that's through, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but a term called deschooling. But it's really just this like mental process more than anything of letting go of everything that we think education has to be, and then making what we actually think could be best for our family. So it's redesigning. It's not, education isn't just curriculum. Like, it could be much bigger. Like, this is kind of abstract, but like life is also education. Like, there's just a lot in that. And OTs see that all the time, right? Like, there's just so much more. So there's that kind of process of getting started. And then there's just this, like, it's essentially life coaching, but asking lots of questions, helping moms reflect, giving them a space to take the time to really change their mindset, because that's a huge part of what's stuck. They feel like it has to be this way and they have to do more, but more is not working. So what's the less that we can do, and what is really needed to help them get where they want to go? So it's hard to kind of make really definite, this is the tangible thing it looks like, but it's just a lot of question asking, and it's so darn fun and life transformative when I do it with women. Like, it's my favorite part of the week.
Well, you can tell how passionate you are about homeschool and helping others learn about it and make it this beautiful experience that you've had yourself. So I think when you're working with clients, they can feel that and they can sense that, and it almost gives them hope and promise that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And where can parents find you and follow you and reach out to you and work with you?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram right now. Though YouTube is in the works.
Okay.
It's a lot of work, as you are learning. But I'm at Homeschooling My Boys is my Instagram name. And then you can email me, Mickey@homeschoolingmyboys.co. And I am happy to reach out. If people want to get more from me, you should get on my newsletter, because I send out weekly or biweekly emails that are just really practical for helping you, and also just a dose of compassion to help you through it and feel seen.
That's perfect.
I like that when we first started our interview, you were like, yeah, I never thought I'd be here. I never would see myself being a homeschool. And here you are sending newsletters, helping people learn about homeschool. Like, isn't it amazing what having kids does to you? Like, where you end up?
Yes, I know. I love starting things. I love very entrepreneurial. And so when I became a mom and then started homeschooling, I felt like, oh, I don't know if I can, like, where's my place in it? Like, what? And it's just so fun, even coaching moms and helping people find space for themselves. Like, once you become a mom, it doesn't mean you don't exist anymore. It's just so fun to figure it out and to see how it unfolds. Like, I would have never thought this would be where I would be, but I do love it.
Who knows where you're going to be in the next 5 years even?
I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea.
You'll be doing such amazing things.
I love it. Okay, if you can leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would that be? I guess listeners, we have watchers now. We have viewers.
Yeah.
Our listeners, our viewers.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
I think it's a little bit of what I just said, but there's room for you. When you create your homeschool, when you create your home as a mom or as a care provider of any sort, consider yourself. Like, so many of us have these, like, childhood wounds that honestly just tell us there isn't room for ourselves. And there's a lot of time and options for healing once you have kids. Like, it's just like all these daily reminders and chances to heal that part of yourself. And if we view all the feedback that our kids are giving us and all of our own responses as an opportunity, it completely changes everything, right? And so when we plan our weeks, we're able to plan ourselves in it. But if we plan it without considering ourselves and plan it while we're operating from this really wounded, hurt place where there's no space for us, or we think there shouldn't be, it's broken and it's not whole, and our kids aren't getting the fullness that they need even. So I think that would be it. Make space for yourself.
Yeah, that's so really good.
So good.
Yes.
I love it.
I think that this whole conversation is full of advice for everyone that's here. So it was perfect. Before we end, though, do you have any questions for us?
I mean, are you guys going to create this nature sensory experience?
Yeah, like a sensory
sensory-led homeschool curriculum.
Sensory homeschool curriculum. I mean, we're probably going to need you to collaborate with us on it. So, yes, stay tuned for that.
That would be fun.
I think that would be super fun.
Right?
Add it to the list.
I mean, there's so much. Let's go climb some trees.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be great. I'm excited to try it.
Oh, Mickey, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and our listeners and our viewers and everyone. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
We will make sure we link everything that you just mentioned in our show notes and our description so people can find you and hopefully reach out if they're curious about homeschool and the journey and need some help from you.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Of course.
Have a great rest of your day. Make sure you go follow Mickey on Instagram. She's at Homeschooling My Boys, and she puts out a lot of really fun content, a lot of fun reels, but also reach out to her if you're thinking about homeschooling, if you are homeschooling and you're having trouble, or if you're homeschooling and you love it and you're not really struggling, but you just want someone to brainstorm with.
I'm not even homeschooling, and I want to go sign up for her newsletter
I
because
know,
I'm
me
so
too.
intrigued.
I like a really good newsletter.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So check that out. If you are listening on the podcast right now, just know that we do have this on YouTube. We have the interview on YouTube.
What?
So you can watch us, you can see us, you can say what's up, you can peep our conversation and see our setup.
Watch us while we're talking.
That sounds creepy. But if you're on YouTube, you could listen to the podcast as well. I don't know what you want to do.
You can do whatever you want, but make sure you let us know that you listened to this episode. Tag us on social media. And if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes, if you're listening on the podcast, we need some reviews. So leave us a review if you're listening on iTunes. Leave some stars, leave some kind words to support Mickey. We appreciate those. And those reviews, your likes, your comments, anything, any way that you interact with us helps us reach more people, more parents, more therapists, more educators. Just know that we really appreciate when you engage with us.
And with that, we will talk to you next week.
Okay, bye. Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
If you want more information on anything mentioned in the show, head over to harkla.co/podcast to get the show notes.
If you have any follow-up questions, the best place to ask those is in the comments on the show notes or message us on our Instagram account, which is at Harkla_family or at All Things Sensory Podcast. If you just search Harkla, you'll find us there.
Like we mentioned before, our podcast listeners get 10% off their first order at Harkla. Whether it's for one of our digital courses or one of our sensory swings, the discount code SENSORY will get you 10% off. That's SENSORY.
Head to harkla.co/sensory to use that discount code right now.
We are so excited to work together to help create confident kids all over the world. While we make every effort to share correct information, we're still learning.
We will double check all of our facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art.
One doctor or therapist may have a different way of doing things from another.
We are simply presenting our views and opinions on how to address common sensory challenges, health-related difficulties, and what we have found to be beneficial that will be as evidence-based as possible.
By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or your child.
Consult your child's pediatrician or therapist for any medical issues that he or she may be having.
This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.